Hi there, this is Linda, and welcome to my channel. And welcome to my 5-part series on tips and tricks for Project Life. I have been doing Project Life for 13 years, and I have no intention of stopping. But I get so many questions frequently about how to make this process manageable, fun, and something that you want to continue doing year after year. So, welcome to my series where we talk about all of these things. This is part 4, where we talk about ideas for what to do when you have a slow week without a lot of stories or photos. Okay, so one of the most frequent questions I get with Project Life is what do I do to fill the weeks when I have a slow week or my life is boring, I don't have anything to document? And I shared in some of my previous videos in this series things to kind of prompt you to take more photos and have photos photos and stories to document. But inevitably, there will be slow weeks. There'll be weeks you forgot to take photos. There will be weeks you just don't have anything you really want to document, or maybe not enough to fill an entire spread. So in this video, we're going to talk about ideas for things you can include when you have a slow week. My first tip or idea is to include current events or things that are happening in the world. So here, for example, I took a screenshot of the front page of the New York Times. I do this often when there is a kind of a big story, but I also just do it randomly if I don't have a lot going on during the week, just so that I have something to include. There is an app called Front Pages, which is a free app, and you can get the front page of pretty much all the newspapers. I don't think they have all of the ones in the world, but they have most of the big ones and probably all of the US papers. So you can definitely find papers on there that are either like a big paper like the New York Times or your local paper to take screenshots of what happened. If you happen to miss that, because you can only get it on the day after. So like, for example, if you logged in on October 15th, you would have the October 14th paper available to you and just the front page. But if you miss that, you can always screenshot articles from the internet. You could find other ways to include current events. You could write about them yourself or stamp them out. You don't need to get a screenshot of the front page. Here is another place where I included screenshots of the front page. I included both the Washington Post and my local newspaper. And I just wanted to kind of document this is what the world looks like right now. Even if it's not really relevant to your life, it helps provide context for the overall story of what's going on. And it is, it's a big piece of life. So even if you're someone who's like, I don't really pay that much attention to the news, it still could be helpful. And sometimes there's some big news stories, like during the pandemic, for example, documenting that it did impact everyone's life. So it was a great place to kind of make sure to document those current events. Here is another place where I documented current events based on a Supreme Court case. So I have the cover of it, and then I have this quote from Ruth Bader Ginsburg that somebody drew on Instagram that I screenshotted. So you don't have to just do newspapers. This was a fun way to document the story of what was going on and include a famous quote in here. Plus, it's very cute and pretty. So the next thing you can do when you have a slow week is include stories from other people. So here, for example, my parents had redone their kitchen and they sent me a before and after photo. And so I included that in here as one of my 4x6 cards. Now, obviously this whole transformation didn't happen this week. My mom probably texted it to me this week, but even if she hadn't, maybe this might have been a slower week. And if she had done it like the week after or the week before, I could have just moved it to fill this in. Like I said in a previous one of these videos, there are no rules. It's okay to break them. So you can easily just make things fit where you need them to fit. Here is another place where I included something that was a story from someone else. My daughter took a field trip to New York City, and here is a photo that she took on that field trip, so I was able to include that in here. My Project Life album typically is just my life and my story, but when I have extra space, I will include stories of other people in my life that don't involve me, like this photo she took when she went to the city to document kind of what she was doing. Here are some other ones where I have some photos that she took with her boyfriend. This one I think she sent to me on Snapchat, and this one I grabbed from her VSCO, and I was able to just include those in here to fill in a week where I didn't have a ton of other photos. Here finally is another photo from my mom. She sent me a photo of her pet tortoise, which is a tortoise that we had when I was growing up. So it's fun to just kind of see a check-in of him. And I didn't actually even add any words for this because I know who he is. I know what this photo is. But I was able to kind of just include it in here to have an additional photo to fill in my pockets. So another thing that you can do to fill in on a slow week is to document the media that you're consuming. So here I took a photo of the book I was reading and I wrote out a reflection or a review of the book. Now I don't usually include that in my project life. That is something that I do typically in a separate journal. But because I had a slow week and I wanted something else to include, I documented that. And also because I think that this quote fit very well with this book. So I wanted to document a little bit more about this media, which fits into the bigger picture of what's going on in my life at this point in time. Here's another one where I included a review of a book and a movie that I watched during this week or read during this week. I didn't include any photos or screenshots from it. Instead, I just did some journaling and reflecting on it, and it was able to kind of fill a pocket and include a little bit more of the story from that week. Here's another place where I included screenshots of the covers of books that I was reading. You can do this very easily with things you're reading, watching, listening to, and just include the covers of the book or the album or the movie poster. And these can be found very easily on Google Images. You can easily find whatever it is you want. My tip for that is to search for the image you want and then filter your search results by large size files so that you're going to get something that's printable quality, and then you can print it to include in your Project Life album. Okay, so another thing that you can do is include monthly recaps or reflections. So even when you're doing Project Life weekly, that doesn't mean that everything you document has to be weekly. You can do quarterly, you can do monthly, and you can reflect on something in a current week. So in 2022, every month there was, in the Stories by the Month kit, the This Happened card and a gratitudes card. And so I used both those cards to reflect on things from the entire month rather than a specific week. Here I have another one where I was reflecting on my resolutions for the entire month rather than doing just the specifics of this week, but these are things that I was working on or kind of goals for the month of January. So I was able to include that in this weekly spread. Another thing you can include in a slow week is the weather. Now, for this week, I had documented the weather because it was particularly interesting that we had extremely cold weather, but you can screenshot your weather app. You can take photos that represent the weather, and that is a great way to kind of document stuff in a slower week. This often takes a little bit of planning ahead during the week, and I talk about that in my photo video, but I will also talk about that a little bit more in this one at the end. But what I want to kind of point out is that the weather is something that you can document that does give a lot of context to your life. Like this week, you can see if I didn't have this, you can see I spent a lot of time inside by the fire, drinking hot coffee. I did go outside a little bit, but it's really more of an indoor week. And this really gives context to that. If in the reverse, you have a very hot week, then you would have a lot of documenting of, that like sunshine, or if you're by the pool, stuff. So you can document the weather as a great context for whatever is going on in your life. Another thing you can do is use a prompt card. So a lot of the products that are designed for Project Life include specific prompts on them. So this one, for example, said my happy place. So I took this opportunity to document how much I love my house and how thankful I am for my house. That's not very specific to this week, but is something that I documented during this week as a result of using this specific prompt card. I have my cards organized, and I do have a link to a video down below of all of the way that I organize my Project Life cards, but a lot of them I have organized by specific themes. So here, for example, I have, these are like prompt-based ones. So things I want to remember, a resolution, what I love about technology, what I don't love about technology. This has nothing to do with a specific story of a week, but how you feel about something. You know, here's a text message log. Here's documenting like the weather, mood, priority, date. Here's, you know, eating, drinking, prompts, which I talked about in the journaling video. But there's just a lot of specific prompts in here that you can use as a jumping off point just to fill in an extra pocket. I also have these ones that have like more like checklists and stuff. So like, for example, here, this is a breakfast one where you can check off what you had for breakfast or what you're normally having for breakfast. And this is a great way to kind of document that, a story that you might not otherwise document. Let's see what else we have in here. I should be something, but instead that's an easy prompt to fill in that fits most weeks. Here is this time was, and you can just check off all of the ones that apply to your week. Outdoorsy, indoorsy. D is for, you know, something that's happening that week. The weather again. There's so many different prompt cards that exist that you can use just to fill in pockets if you need a little bit more to add in to your album, and it's going to add more of the story rather than just being pretty. The next one I want to point out is something that you can do in a slow week is documenting things that are happening just around your house. So here I have a photo of this little nook in my kitchen, which has changed so much since this point in time. More like it's now, when I'm filming this, it's midway through 2024, so it's been over a year, but this looks very different. Some things look the same, some look different, but it's great to see a reflection of what that looks like. My craft room doesn't look like this anymore. This is what my yard looked at that specific time. So it is a great way to just include some photos of or reflections of what your life or what your home looks like at this specific point in time. Here is another example of an around the house photo. This is what my living room looked like at this particular point in time. I have a different couch now. It looks totally different. I have a different coffee table. I do have the same rug, but it's so fun to see what it looks like at a specific point in time. Here's also one of what my cubicle looked like at work, or the wall of my cubicle. And this is fun to see. This is what my 2022 calendar was. This is the income tax map that I have on my wall that is extremely outdated at this point in time. But it's super fun just to kind of get a look at what things, places in my life look like at a particular point in time. Okay, so another thing that you can document is what your schedule looks like. So here, there was this card that said work week, and it had the days of the week, and I messed up on it, so I had to white out, unfortunately. But what I wrote was like what my work schedule was and what my daughter's work schedule was, because that is something that is not the same anymore, but it was pretty routine from week to week at this point in time. And it's fun to kind of capture what it looked like at this specific point in time. Here is another similar card or documenting where I documented just like what my work schedule kind of looked like, or what my schedule looked like during this week. So I had the Monday off for Martin Luther King Day. I worked in the office for Tuesday and Wednesday. I telecommuted on Thursday. And then on Friday, I had the day off because of the way my schedule works. I'm off every other Friday. And then the weekend was errands and crafting. So I was able to kind of see what my schedule looked like at this point in time. I will not necessarily always have this office to telecommuting ratio. If you had done this, in 2019, then when 2020 hit, you would have been like, oh, that's how different things were. It's always fun to see those things because you never know when they're going to change. So another thing that you can include is social media. So here is something I was featured on the December Daily Instagram. I took a screenshot of it and I included it in here. That is just a random thing that happened at this point in time, and it's something that's easy to include. You can get social media of things you're scrolling. You can get a screenshot of all of the things that you've been liking or watching. You can do, things that you've posted, things that the people in your family have posted, or others have posted about you. Whatever it is that you want to grab off social media, that is something that's great to document in Project Life. So the last tip I want to leave you with when talking about slow weeks in Project Life is something that just kind of comes from practice with doing this project over and over, but the idea that, especially if you want to do weekly, to do a weekly check-in. So I suggest you do this partially through the week, sometime towards the end. So for me, my weeks run Monday through Sunday. I tend to do my check-ins on Friday. And basically what I mean by a check-in is just look at what you've accumulated. Do you have pieces of ephemera? Have you written down stories? Do you have photos taken? Because if you haven't taken any photos on Friday, that can be the push you need to go around and take some photos of rooms in your house, or grab some things off social media, grab those newspaper screenshots, grab all of the weather screenshot, whatever it is you want to do to include to fill in that week. It is so much easier to collect it if it's still during the week itself. So what I do is every Friday afternoon, I do a check-in where I look at what I have accumulated so far and kind of give myself a rating. Do I need to try to collect more stuff over the weekend so that I have enough for a spread? Or am I good? Do I have maybe too much for this weekly spread that I need to maybe slow it down a little bit? The check-in kind of helps me gauge what I need to do over the weekend when I typically have more time to collect more stories and photos. I hope that this video gave you some tips and ideas to help you document project life through those slower weeks. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Thanks. Bye.